So last week I had the blessing of being with some of my family, especially three of my little nieces, 11-year-old, 8-year-old, and 4-year-old. And this past Friday, we got to watch a movie that I've been wanting to see for a very, very long time. Tangled. So that wonderful film about Rapunzel. And it was the little 4-year-old that convinced me to watch it. She was like, "You're going to love this, Father Andy." Or actually, Uncle Andy, she calls me. And I did. It's beautiful. And I'd like to use that story as a commentary on the scriptures today. Because a lot of the old tales, these fairy stories, ultimately have a Judeo-Christian background to them. If you dig into them, there's a lot of Christian imagery within it. So, for anyone who doesn't know the story of Rapunzel, you have the story of this child who, when she's very young, is taken away from her family, locked up in a tower, and there is this wicked woman who calls herself Mother, and she says, "Mother knows best." You know that funny song that's there. But she's, in a sense, creating this world around this lost princess, Rapunzel, saying, "You have to stay here because it's really dangerous out there." And she's creating a web of lies that's keeping this little princess from being able to come home to her family, to her mother and father who are waiting and waiting. And yet they never give up. Every single birthday of little Rapunzel, who now has hair that's growing long and long and long and long and long, but every single birthday they have the Festival of Lights, in which the king and queen take a lantern and they lift it up and it goes into the sky. And all the other people of the realm do this as well. They lift them up. And Rapunzel, as she's growing up, and she has lots and lots of time within her one little room there, and there's a funny song about that too, she knows that those are not just stars, but there's something else. And they're connected to her because they're happening on her birthday. And again, the wicked woman is saying over and over again, "Nope, you can never ever leave." But ultimately, she takes that courageous leap to step out of this false world and into new life. And there's this powerful scene in which she's coming out of the tower. She's just about to touch the ground. And she pauses. And she doesn't really know what's going to happen. Do I do this or do I go back in? And she makes that leap. She touches the ground, and she's filled with that experience of what the ground feels like. And it doesn't mean that everything is just happy after that. You have that very interesting moment there that's very, very telling about life, being right on cloud 9 and then crashing and going up and down, up and down, up and down. And yet, even when she's maybe tempted to go back, the person that's walking with her, Eugene, is saying, "Well, maybe you can just go back because it seems like you're having a bad day right now." It's like, "No, I need to find out what those lanterns are. There's something that they're telling me something about myself, and I have to go and see them." So she goes and sees them. And there's that beautiful song, "At last I see the light." And she starts to be able to see everything in that light. And that comes most especially when the wicked woman does the deception and stuff like that, and she finds herself back in her prison tower again, and it seems like all hope is lost. But during her trip into the realm, she was seeing lots of different things, including a picture of the king, the queen, and the little baby lost princess. And she was given during her travels a little handkerchief that had an image of the sun. And as she sits there and pulls out this token once again. It's through that image that then she starts looking at all of her paintings, and she starts realizing that that sun is everywhere because it comes from a memory deep within her of the mobile that was hanging above her when she was taken away. And she sees the blurry image of her infant eyes seeing her parents that she couldn't really see. And because of that image that she saw in the realm, she connects it. And that light actually becomes something that opens her eyes to everything. And it makes the crashing false world fall down. And she realizes that she's a princess. She is the lost princess. And ultimately, that light will bring her back to the embrace of her father and mother, which is what her heart has been looking for. And it's been seeing in her paintings and everything, this projecting, this beautiful desire that's in her heart to come back home, but she didn't recognize it until she received the light. And it opened up everything. That's a commentary on the scriptures today. The second reading speaks about faith is the realization of what is hoped for. And this is another way of translating the Greek, I think it's a little better actually, is the assurance of things not yet seen. So faith is not merely something that we believe in propositions. Sometimes we think, well, faith is just, okay, I believe this, but what does that actually mean? Faith is ultimately entrusting ourselves to a person, to Jesus Christ. And it's something that all of creation can point towards, but there has to be this leap. There has to be some way of, so in a sense, throwing yourself into grace, falling into grace. And that image of Rapunzel coming down and just about touching the ground but stops, she has to make this leap. And it's only then when she discovers the beauty of the world around her. It's only when she pulls out that token of the sun that her eyes are opened and she realizes who she is. There's something about faith that allows us to realize what's hoped for. It opens our eyes to the very thing that has been moving in our heart, the lanterns that have been way off in the distance. What faith does is actually, in a sense, opens that to say, I'm touching, in a certain sense, this mystery on that other side. But it's also the assurance of things not yet seen, which means there's an already first awakening, but then there has to be this whole process. There's a lot that happens from just touching the ground to being embraced by her father and mother again. And there are hopeful times, there are scary times, there are times of clarity, there's times of confusion. But it's again that light that keeps moving her onward until she finally becomes safe in her parents' arms. Now, on vacation as well, one of the most beautiful memories was just holding my little 4-year-old niece, Leslie, who has quite a personality. She was super tired after a water park. So she just came over and she just kind of crawled into my lap. She just kind of went, and you know that feeling when they're just completely sleeping and all of a sudden they become like 100 pounds heavier? So I'm holding her and I'm like, my back is going to go out. So I kind of carefully sit down. And so she's just lying right there. I could hear her little heartbeat, her little chest rise up and down. And my brother and sister-in-law are like, well, don't you want to have fun on the water slides? Like, we could take her right now. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is gold right now. Like, my heart is satisfied. And I'm just the uncle. But that was one of the most peaceful moments that I treasure. Now, if I had that experience of my little niece, how much more does God have that experience with each one of you? He wants you to be snuggled to his heart. That's actually what St. Faustina in the Diary of Divine Mercy, she uses a word in Polish that says, God wants to have us snuggle to his heart. And he, in the Eucharist, wants to snuggle next to our heart. That's why he made himself little, so that he could just come and just snuggle right next to our heart. Isn't that a beautiful image? That's what happens in the Eucharist. He snuggles next to our heart, and we find ourselves in his arms, which is where our heart wants to be. And faith is the way that leads us there. Now, how do we catch this faith? You don't take a test. You don't do a multiple choice thing and all of a sudden you have faith. It's a gift given to you in baptism. But a lot of times it lies dormant, like chocolate syrup on the bottom of a glass of milk. It ain't chocolate milk yet until it gets stirred. How does it get stirred? It gets stirred by all of the evidence that is around of the presence of God. And that's in the gift of creation. But most importantly, it's in the gift of men and women who are living witnesses of knowing Jesus. This is the whole image of, you have the king and queen sending their light up, but you also have the entire realm taking their light and lifting that up into the sky as well. And it's being surrounded, like on the canoe in that tale, in which she sees all the light around her, and even all the suns that she paints all around her room. It's surrounding her, and it awakens her to discover what she's been looking for. Maybe this has happened in your life, and I bet for many of you, when you've come to know Jesus, when he came alive in your heart, it wasn't necessarily from a test that you took. That kind of points you in the right direction, but it's being surrounded by friends, by fellow parishioners, by family members, by different people that are around you. And their love soaks into you, and your eyes are open, and at last you see the light. This happened in my own life. If you remember, I preached about this a little while ago, that one of my early memories as a 5-year-old was watching my dad look at the Eucharist during Mass. And I remember in that little memory, I still have it in my mind, just like little Rapunzel has this memory, and it keeps being awakened there, is I remember looking into his eyes because I was sitting there and I was watching my dad just bow his head after looking at Jesus when he was lifted up during Mass in the consecration, and he just bowed his head, and it was like a reflection. I saw the love of God in my dad's love for Jesus. And something sparked in my own heart, saying, he's real, he's alive, and he loves me. And that happened when I was 5 years old. And so even the little ones that are here, they are sponges ready to experience this beautiful reflection of each of your eyes and each of your hearts and each of your voices, praising and loving God at Mass. So allow this Christ light. Be like the realm, the Christian realm that lifts up the Christ light, because there are many little Rapunzels that maybe are out in our world that are longing and hungering from a distance to be drawn towards that Father's embrace. But if we don't lift up our Christ light, then they won't see the way home. So lift that up. Allow it to be stirred up so that you can see the light. And through your loving encounter with the Father's embrace, they can see it too. So your homework, watch Tangled and experience the light of Christ through it in a mysterious way. And sing all the songs.